Good evening. Welcome to Economics 330, Global Trade and Political Economy. This is the City University of New York, MEC. Today is April 21st, 2026. And welcome to Office Hour and Lecture. Um, in today's lecture, we're going to continue with the role of multinational corporations in international trade relations. This topic is important, not the least because multinational corporations or MNCs are responsible for a significant portion of global trade. Um, Hang on one second. Let me also fix this while we're at it. Let me pin my video. Okay, now we're doing much better. Um, so this topic is important, not the least because multinational corporations are responsible for a significant portion of goods that are involved in global trade. In today's lecture, and indeed through your assessment for the week, we will discuss some of the pros and cons of multinational corporations, their cost, their criticism, and praise. Again, as I mentioned early in the semester, we have to apply dialectical thinking to issues, that is, seeing the issues from all sides. In particular, this week, we will discuss multinational corporations in the context of international political economy theories and perspectives. That said, your learning objective for the week includes first, identify and or define a multinational corporation. The answer you should think of this way. A multinational corporation or MNC is a company that has business operations in at least one country other than its home country. By, by some definitions, multinational corporations also generate at least 25% of its revenue outside of its home country. Notably, some multinational corporations, such as Google, may have budgets that exceed some small countries. This is actually true, but quite scary too. Many multinational corporations are based in developed countries, i.e., global north, i.e., countries at the core, but they can have a positive economic effect on countries in which they operate, especially as multinational corporations often make direct investments in foreign countries, and those direct investments could have a positive externality in the countries where they do business. Advocates say that multinational corporations create high-paying jobs and offer technologically advanced goods in countries that otherwise will not have access to such opportunities or goods. The second learning objective is to explain why multinational corporations are criticized for playing deleterious roles in host countries. Critics of multinational corporations, or MNCs again, believe multinational corporations exert undue political influence over governments, exploit developing countries, and create job losses in their home country. Understand this as an example. Again, this is the central thesis behind some of the tariff argument from the Trump administration. They argue, and those who take this position would concur, that multinational corporations, as they go into relentless search of the lowest place, cheapest place, or least expensive place to produce their goods and or services, that they end up moving business from their home country to developing countries, thereby causing deindustrialization in their home country. Others argue that the history of multinational corporations is linked with the history of colonialism. Consider that many of the first multinational companies were commissioned at the behest of European monarchs to conduct international expeditions. These early multinational companies include, among others, the East Indian Company that was established in 1600. The British multinational enterprise took part in international trade and exploration and operated trading posts in India. Another early multinational corporation that began as part of colonialism is the Swedish Africa Company, founded in 1649. The Hudson Bay Company, founded in 1670, and the Royal Niger Company, a mercantile company chartered by the British government in 1879 as the United African Company and renamed National African Company in 1881 and to Royal Niger Company in 1886. This is a deep history that has stretched centuries. Discuss the role, and the third learning objective for the week is to discuss the role that multinational corporations play in the transfer of technology and trade in the world. To which you may say that multinational corporations play a crucial role in the transfer of technology and trade in the world by producing the same quality of goods at lower cost. Multinational companies can reduce prices and increase the purchasing power of consumers worldwide. But again, there is a flip side to this, again, employing dialectical thinking. Consider that if a multinational corporation, for instance, let's use a real life example. General Motors Corporation, the company that builds Cadillacs, that builds GMC trucks, that builds Chevrolet, among others. They, up until recently, had a strategy that they wanted their small cars to be cost competitive. But their argument was that if they built those cars in the United States where the value of the dollar is high, and in some states where they have production facilities that are unionized, that the cost of production will be so high that they will sell those cars at a premium. And if they sell it at a premium, they're not going to be able to sell many of them because they will be expensive. And it would undermine the value proposition for the cars. So their strategy was to build those cars in Mexico and some in South Korea. So because they were building these cars in areas with a lower cost structure, they would argue than, say, the typical United States city. They were able to sell these cars at a much cheaper price point. Now, if you're a consumer looking to buy a car, this is great news for you, of course. And that is on one side of the equation. However, on the other side of the equation, so in this case, in this example one, it will cause the consumer's dollar to go further because they're buying a desired product, in this case, a car, at a cheaper price point. That means that purchasing power has been increased. On the other hand, if you're the guy who used to work at a plant that has now been shut down so that the production of that car can move to Mexico or indeed to South Korea, that is not good news because now you're unemployed. Now you're not part of you can engage in effective demand of the goods and services that you desire. And that can be problematic. So you can see it from both sides. So I say this to say that it's not a simple open and short case to say that you want to onshore the manufacture of some goods and or the provision of some services. Because given the cost structure and given the minimum wage in the United States, you may end up artificially increasing the price of those goods and services and making them unattainable for a vast majority of the population that would otherwise wanted to consume them. So you have to strike a healthy balance. And this is dialectical thinking in action. So as such, on the other side of the ledger, there is a trade-off in globalization. The price of low cost is that domestic jobs often move overseas. So consider that. The price of the low cost is that domestic jobs often move overseas. Another clear example is up until maybe a year ago, folks were buying fast fashion on Shein, on Temu, and all those other places, and you buy it a week later, they deliver the clothes or shoes or whatever, you purse, whatever. This was inexpensive, good, relatively inexpensive. And this was a price and cost structure that the boutiques on Mainstream, on Atlantic Avenue, on Utica Avenue could not compare with. This reminds me of my days in Brooklyn. These stores could not compare with this kind of price competition. And you can then see that these stores will begin to lose sales because consumers will figure that it's just cheaper and almost as even perhaps even more convenient to buy from Shein because all you got to do is turn on your laptop, whip out your credit card, and voila, you order it. But the price of that low cost is that the boutique on Mainstream may have to start laying off staff because it's not making enough sales to support that number of staff. And that will cause job loss in some cases. Others will argue that no, net it may not be job loss because the jobs will shift. Because as the boutique is firing sales attendants because of loss of sales, the delivery company that will deliver the goods from Shein will probably be hiring more delivery drivers to help satisfy this increased traffic of deliveries so that it will just be a shift in the labor force dynamic. But net, that might not be any job loss. There is a merit there, but again, you want to look at the quality of the jobs being lost and being created. But that's a much deeper argument and beyond the remit of this class. So to put a button on it, again, the price of low cost is that domestic jobs often move overseas, and this can increase unemployment in the home country of a multinational corporation and make it difficult for long-term employees in outsourced industries to find new jobs. Now, we shift to learning outcomes, right? Because there's learning objectives for the week and then your learning outcomes for the week. So at the end of this week, you should be able to, one, differentiate between foreign direct investment control and portfolio investment no control. Foreign direct investment control implies investment by foreign investors directly in the productive assets of another country, while portfolio investment no control means investing in financial assets such as stocks and bonds of entities located in another country. Your second learning outcome for the week should be note that major decisions that a multinational corporation should consider, right? These are some of the regarding how it selects and operates in a specific location. And this includes, among others, opportunity for improved efficiencies, lower production cost, agreeable regulatory framework, and eventual larger market share and or margins. So these are some of the drivers for a multinational corporation to decide whether to offshore its production location. And if so, some of the critical questions that it might have to evaluate is if they move to a specific location, what will be the opportunity for improved efficiency, lower production cost, agreeable regulatory framework, and eventual larger market share and or margins? Because the whole idea is, of course, also to return shareholder value. Your third learning outcome for the week should be it's another significant strategy for multinational corporations is transfer pricing. That is, when corporate tax rates differ between countries, multinational corporations have an incentive to set its transfer prices in a way that reduces its tax burden by reporting higher profits in that country where corporate profits taxed more lightly. So if you look at the European Union, you will quickly realize that many, if not most, multinational companies are headquartered in Ireland. And that is because of transfer pricing, because of the relatively lower corporate tax rate in the Republic of Ireland. Um, the fourth learning outcome is to differentiate the perspectives of liberals, realists, and historical materialists about multinational corporations. And quickly to recap that, you can see how liberals will want to look for institutions that arbitrate trade and set the rules for trade, such as the World Trade Organization, which you guys recently wrote on. And historical materialists would see multinational corporations as a tool or an instrument for governments to extend the power of the state and to subjugate as necessary the other countries. Of course, realists would strike a balance between the two. Um, and the fifth learning outcome is uh, you want to be able to know the difference between horizontal and vertical integration. Of course, horizontal integration is when a business grows by acquiring a similar company in their industry at the same point of the supply chain. So if a supermarket buys another supermarket chain, that is horizontal integration because they are at the same point in the supply chain. Whereas vertical integration is when a business expands by acquiring another company that operates before or after them in the supply chain. The vertical integration will be, for instance, um, if DSW shoe store were to buy, I don't know, a shoe manufacturer, so it not only sells shoes, then it would have gone up in the supply chain to acquire a business that actually manufactures the products that it sells. So, in summary, I did mention that this will be a fairly short class. So I wish you a successful completion of Module 11, International Corporations. Kindly note that for next week, our focus will be on international economic development. And with that, I wish you all good luck and success with your weekly assessment. Thank you.